I think we're just about there, sir.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2.
You're on.
Thank you very much. Are we ready to go, guys?
Yes, they
Yeah,
are.
very good. Okay, well, good evening and welcome everyone to our town council meeting for February 27. 2 more days to go in February, and it's going to be March. It's coming. So with that, Pam, I'd ask you to call the roll, please.
Absolutely. Let's begin with Dieter Schindler.
Present.
Ryan Slack is out. Elise Hoddle.
Present.
David Knight.
Here.
Angela
I'm here
Anderson.
digitally.
Yeah, Ryan's here.
I'm sorry, Ryan. Yes, I was going to come back to you. You are online. Thank you. Dieter
Yes,
Schindler
thank you. Sorry.
and Bill Kane.
Here.
All righty.
All right, thank
so
you.
much.
First order of business is to take up the consent agenda. There are 2 items. One's the minutes from February 13th, 2024, and the second is a resolution, number 8, series of 24, resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, approving the 2024 streets maintenance chip and fog seal program, and authorizing staff to enter a contract with GMCO LLC. So I think Boyd is here if we have any questions about it, but I would entertain a motion to approve consent agenda.
Mayor, I move that the town council approve the consent agenda items as presented. Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay, good. Okay, next order of business is call to the public. So this is the time where we will hear from members of the public on topics that are not on our regularly scheduled agenda. So we have items later on if you're here to talk about, yes, sir? Oh, well, let me finish. Yeah. So if you, if you are commenting on, if you're here for Black Mountain or something else that's on the agenda, we'll take those comments up at the regularly scheduled time for that agenda topic. So you can either address council virtually online, make sure you connect through www.basalt.net, and you basically will go into a waiting room and our town clerk will allow you to address town council virtually. So with that, we'll take comments from the public. Come on up. There you go.
John Young, 95 Light Hill Road, which is an old snowmass. I would like to say a few words about your outgoing mayor, with your permission. I met
No
Bill.
tar, no feathers, man.
Well, nobody's hit me yet. I met Bill Kane 48 years ago. I'd like to say we grew up together, but we grew old together, I think is the more appropriate thing.
Sounds about
He was
right.
at the city of Aspen as a planner, and I was Pitkin County's first trail director. And I had the task of going to City Hall and getting permission to put a bridge over to Oklahoma Flats. And believe it or not, Lee Schweller here built that bridge. So we got 3 old timers here that know the project. Back in those days, it was really a tough thing. You had to go in and ask and say, what do you think of putting a bridge across the river? They said, sure. So that's what we did. We put a bridge across the river, and that was the end of it. But I've been able to watch Bill throughout his career with the Aspen Skiing Company, with Design Workshop as one of the principals, and at every step of the way, and obviously Basalt Town Manager, Basalt Mayor, every step of the way he's kept his wit, his good sense of humor, his leadership skills have been impeccable in my opinion. My favorite Bill Kane story when he was with Design Workshop was he was an outstanding skier and probably still is, but he was one of the best in the valley. And he was working for Design Workshop and he became known to help build ski areas throughout the world. And one year he had broken his leg 18 months prior. And so this hotshot ski guy was flown to Argentina to help them design a ski area. And so he had not been on skis in 18 months because of this broken leg, was convalescing and all that. And the first thing they did was, oh great, your helicopter's ready. So he got on his helicopter, flew up to the top of a if you fall, you die mountain, and hadn't made a turn in 18 months. And so here's this hotshot skier going to show him how it's done. And he gulped a couple of times, I think, in his own words, and said, well, I guess I better remember how to ski. So off he went, and down he did, and he did the job and did it well. So Bill's fingerprints are throughout not only this valley, but they're throughout the United States and they're throughout the world. And I think that we've all been very blessed to have him in our midst, and you certainly have been blessed to have him as a mayor. So thank you, Bill, for your
Thanks, John.
service and everything you do.
John, we normally have a 3-minute time limit for public speakers, but, you know, if you got plenty of, hey, thank you for the kind words. That's really kind of you. Really something. Anyone else want to say something truthful to the, thanks, John. Anyone else calling in or in the audience that would like to address council?
We have a hand up on Zoom from Randy Chase.
Okay.
Randy, if you would unmute, you can speak to the town council.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you, council members, so much for taking time to listen to me. I have some input that I'm going to make to the Black Mountain project, and that is on the agenda later. Is that correct?
It is, and we're going to defer
so
comments
separate from that-
on Black Mountain until we encounter that
Separate from that, I
agenda.
wanted to make a statement right now, if that's okay.
If it's addressing,
It's absolutely nothing to do with Black Mountain. Can I
Okay.
say something?
okay, fine, sure, go ahead.
Hi, Randy Chase is my name, and I have a group called Colorado Progress, and I'm going to be organizing election activities in the Roaring Fork Valley related to community housing programs. And I'm going to ask you, council members, if you can give me permission to participate in the election coming up in Basalt as a political organizer and activist. Is that okay with you guys?
I didn't get that question.
I feel like there's more hoops.
If this is a question that
So
might be
the
appropriate for
question is,
staff, I'm not
do
exactly
I-
sure what the ask
Excuse me,
is.
may
but-
I ask a question more clearly if you didn't understand me?
Yeah.
Do I have permission from individual council members to work on the election in Basalt? The current laws of Basalt prohibit me from participating in the election, and I'm asking your permission as individuals. I'll follow up with an individual email to each of you asking your permission for me, Randy Chase, to participate in this election coming up in April. And you can answer yes or no, or you can ignore me. So I'm going to ask the council right now, can I participate in the election?
Well, I think we're going to have to defer that question to our town clerk, and I'm not sure exactly when you say working on it, I'm not sure what that task would be, whether it's a poll watcher or what it would be.
No, I'm gonna organize voters. I'm gonna teach them about issues, and I'm gonna talk to them about candidates. That's how you work on an election. How do you work on an election, sir? You knock on doors and talk to
If
voters.
you'd like to reach out to
That's what I want
staff,
to
I'm
do.
sure we'd be happy to talk to them about
Then
what
I
might be
come to Basalt
available or
to work
not.
on the election. Yes or no?
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Jeff?
If Randy'd like to reach out to staff on this, I'm
Yeah.
sure we'd be happy to
Yeah,
talk to
Randy,
them.
why don't you come in and talk to
No,
Pam?
I want to,
and Ryan?
listen, it's an election with the council people, and you guys are here in a public meeting. I'm asking you publicly, can I come and work on your election? And you're refusing to even acknowledge my question.
No, we're
It's a
acknowledging
fair
your question.
question.
We're just saying we don't know exactly what that involves, and we'll rely on our staff to advise us whether this is appropriate or not. And I don't think we can answer your question right now. We don't know enough about it, so
Okay, so-
with that, I appreciate it. Okay,
There,
so come on in and talk to Pam and Ryan, and then they'll pose the question for us, and we can take action on it at when we have the background and we have advice from our staff. So thank you for calling in. Okay. Anyone
I was
else?
going to finish. Is my time up?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so you consume some of my time. I would like 30 more seconds. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
Hi. So what I want to do is participate in the election and help to influence what the voters think to the people who are running for office. It's community organizing, and I'll be knocking on doors of voters, and I just need to be able to exist and live in the city of Basalt during the election period. And right now, you guys are prohibiting me from participating in the election, and it's unfair. And I've said it publicly now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else like to address council, virtually or in the audience? All right, thank you. That completes our public comment period. So next up is the mayor and council reports, comments. Any tonight? So, okay, hearing none, we move on. Ryan? You have manager's report? No, sorry. Okay, great. Okay, we're going to move right along then. We're, next up is our fourth quarter financial report. Doug Patterson's going to tell us where we came out.
All right, thank you.
It's very suspicious that the fourth quarter hit all the projected budget numbers for '23.
All but one. All but one.
Right,
So,
the most important one.
right?
Yeah.
So here we go. So first page here in the overview here is a graphical illustration of our general fund revenue components along with the expenditures. You'll see in the blue, 2/3 of which is sales tax driven. That's money remitted directly by the state. It's also for our marijuana. It's also for the county taxes and some other miscellaneous receipts we receive from the state. And there's followed then by property tax, and then there's a smattering of other elements of income being license fees, intergovernment revenue, which is essentially grants, some other tax revenue. So that's the graphical illustration. Next page, we'll look at the actual numbers. Before we do that, we'll just look at the expenses. Again, just graphically illustrating each department. Public Works leads the way at basically 1/3 of the expenditures for the town in the general fund, followed by the police department. And then the administration is the third at 17. And then really tied for fourth is the planning department, along with the legislative departments of the general fund. So, all right, going to page, next page was actually numbers. You need like binoculars here to look at that. Look in your book. The original, just to refresh everybody's memory, the originally adopted budget had a use of funds of 1.7 million. And we amended it over the years, or over the year, twice, and we added 700,000 in revenue. So the adjusted budget was a use of funds of essentially $1 million, just south of $1 million. And where we came out for the year is we actually had a surplus of 800. So net, that was a $1.8 million swing between what we had budgeted versus what we are actually ending up at. So that's a favorable swing of $1.8 million. Look at the components of that, basically three components. One is revenue. Revenue was higher than budget by $350,000. CapEx, capital expenditures, was less than what we had budgeted by 400, and our operating expenditures were less by about $1 million. So then at the end of the day, that's a good story, being 1.8 million favorable to the budget. We did miss sales tax revenue. We had predicted that all year. So we missed revenue even after taking it down. We had, I was the one worried about our building permit fees being less than budget. So I guess I was borrowing trouble throughout the years, so we weren't making that number. And we wouldn't have made it if it hadn't been for Lake Modern was pulled a permit in December that threw us over the top. So we did make that number after all. The one department that was over budget was Parks by basically $15,000. I mean, actually it was more than that. It was like $20,000. And that's a bit of a bit of a optically, it was optically over 20, but it really wasn't, because it was all set by a grant we had received for some planting of some trees for $35,000. So it's like the story with the pool last year. We had run over the budget, but we had more revenue than we anticipated. So net, the town was actually in a positive position. So the general fund actually ended up in a pretty good position for the year. So any questions before I move on to the restricted funds?
Any questions, council?
Makes sense.
Yeah, excellent forecasting
Okay.
for 23, I would say.
Right? So we did pretty well. So then moving into the restricted funds, start with graphically illustrating just the revenue, not the expense. And 60% of this is taxes. This is our post-revenue along with our cigarettes and lodging tax. That's followed by what's in green is the 32%. That is our RETAs. That's our real estate transfer assessments. There's 9 RETAs throughout town, and they generate a meaningful contribution in the current year. And that was a big number relative to the budget. Then I call cats and dogs, affectionately, this miscellaneous items of impact fees that make up the difference. But essentially, this is driven by taxes and RETAs. So looking at the next page, just moving along, just a little bit like what we had with the general fund, is that we had budgeted a loss, or not a loss, but a use of funds of $700,000. And throughout the year, we had did some amendments, and we actually added $1 million of expenditures to the original budget. So we were projecting a budget use of funds of $1.7 million. And you might remember that we had, it was like August, July or August, we had voted to, or not we, but the council here voted to disperse to TACA the money that was held in that reserve account for them. So that was why the budget went up by about $1 million of a use of funds. But again, like the general fund, we had a budgeted number of 1.7 as a use of funds. And you look at the results, and our surplus actually was $1.1 million. So $1.1 million surplus versus a use of funds of $1.7 million. So we were good to $2.8 million, which is a favorable variance. And look behind the curtain where we were on those $2.8 million. 800 of it was in revenue, principally driven by the RETA revenue. And we had capital that we did not spend all of our capital money that we had budgeted by $1.6 million. And then we also did not spend $400,000 of our tobacco money, and that's really a timing difference. With Roaring Fork School District, we had money set aside for the bleachers and the weight room, some improvements there to the high school, and they weren't quite ready to implement that project, so we hadn't dispersed the money. So it's, again, timing difference. So we ended up favorable to budget by about $2.8 million. So a good story across the board on the general and restricted funds. So I'll pause there. Let's see if there's any questions of council.
Council, anyone?
Pretty straightforward.
On this side of the table?
All right.
Okay. Doug, thank you.
All right, so rounding third here is last page. We have 4 other funds where we're tracking. One is the bond fund. This is our mill levy for debt assessment. So we have money coming in from that through the mill levy of essentially $950,000, and that's meeting our principal and interest obligations on our 2 liabilities we have outstanding, our tax exempt bond offering, and then our taxable bond offering that was done in 2021, I believe it was. Then we have the Capital Construction Fund. This really is I don't think this presentation, this was endorsed by the Financial Advisory Board. I don't know if this really does justice to this fund because there's so much in it. It's this Midland project. This is also our green initiatives. It's also our affordable housing. So there's a lot of activity within this fund, and it's simply showing the ins and outs for the current year. And there's a more comprehensive report that we have previously presented to council, which would delineate out what was Midland, what was the green project, and what was affordable housing. I think that's probably more of the accurate presentation because it shows cumulative activity of the bonds, from the bonds when they were issued to where we are right now. And I would just say that, in this fourth quarter, there wasn't a significant amount of activity that was influencing any of these numbers, and they're pretty much in line with what we had conveyed, which I think was in December, that we had follow-up that Ryan had presented, because I wasn't here, as far as what the capital construction fund was, and covering all of those three domains. Then we have the water fund, which is an enterprise fund. And you'll see here that we did not make revenue. We are off by about $300,000, principally driven by tap fees being down and surcharges being down. That was offset by expenses also being down. So net, we had a budgeted loss or use of funds of $400,000, and we were to the good by about $60,000. And it's principally driven by OpEx being lower and our capital expenditures not being spent. So water fund ended in relatively good shape. And we've been alluding to the study that we have been doing on our infrastructure of the water from tip to tail, from source to distribution to the metering of people's homes. And just whether or not the infrastructure we have in place now is going to carry the day for the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. So we are really in the final stages of having that completed. We're having a call, I think it was actually today, or sometime this week, I believe. And we'll be in the process of wrapping that up and then coming out with some recommendations about what we need to be doing to address the various domains identified in the study, whether it be the treatment, distribution, metering of the water supply. So there's more to come on that, but that is coming. And then last but not least is the Conservation Trust Fund. This is the money that comes from the little bit of a percentage. Each lottery ticket goes to this fund that goes, then gets dispersed to these various municipalities throughout the state. And then that's used for green efforts. We use it for community gardens and just some of the parks expense that we have. It's not a big number. It's like $25,000. And that's what we've been historically been getting, and that's what we've been typically spending. So pretty unremarkable activity within that fund. So anyway, so right now we're done with the 2023. We're in the process of accumulating all of our documents for our audit that will begin in earnest first part of April, and we'll be on track to deliver the audited results first week in June. We'll submit our documents to the GFOA for the, again, presentation of the Distinguished Accounting Award, whatever it's called, the financial presentation. And I'm not anticipating what you'll see in the audited results being significantly different, if it's different at all, from what you're seeing tonight. But time will tell. We'll see. We'll get the audit done, and we'll cut the cards, and we'll see where they end up.
Doug, you think our bond fund revenue for '24 is looking as bright as it was in '23? And that's a crystal ball, I realize, but
The bond?
yeah,
The bond revenue?
yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, that's fixed. I mean, we have the,
I think he means the.
No,
interest.
I mean the interest on.
oh, the interest. Well, yeah, well, I think I lowballed the number, frankly, on where we're at on interest income.
Yeah,
I mean, we're gravitating right now. The yield curve is, to me, it's relatively flat. It's a little bit higher on it's still inverted, but not as much as it was. And, there's been a lot of speculation that rates are going to come down. I mean, we went with a 4-year ladder on a lot of our reserve fund that we have earmarked. We have some money coming up now with the affordable housing. That's dry powder. And we'll be looking at exactly how we'll be rolling out that money as it relates to building out Stotts Mill. You'll be hearing a little bit about that tonight from Michelle. But I'm looking at maybe extending maturities, frankly. I think it makes sense, especially if rates drop. I mean, we are in an election year, so you got that going for you, that inflation seems to be one day seems to be under control, and then other days things come out hot. So, it kind of go ebbs and flows. But again, it is an election year, which would indicate that, there'd be pressure on taking the rates down.
yeah.
But having said that, I don't know, we went from 33 trillion in national debt to 34 trillion in national debt in 106 days. So we are floating a lot, there's a lot of demand for the paper that's being issued by the government. And supply and demand would imply, the rates would have to go higher. So there's a lot of yin and yang going. And frankly, I think we should get comfortable with a rate. And we're not gonna accept credit risk. And we're gonna take what the market gives us. So, but the long answer to your question, I'm comfortable with what we budgeted.
Good. Okay, we'll take that to the bank. Any questions from council on our fourth quarter update? Thanks, Doug. Good work as usual. So that concludes our presentation on the fourth quarter financial report. Next item up are council actions, the first of which is interview and appointment for Parks, Open Space, and Trails Committee. So there we are. You guys are here. So, Michelle, why don't you take it away and introduce Mercedes? Is it pronounced Mercedes? Very good.
So I'm here tonight with Mercedes Brown, who's applied for the Post Commission. Post makes recommendations to Town Council on the use of the town's 1% open space sales tax, provides recommendations on land use approvals, significant parks, open space, and trails uses, and such. Post currently has 4 voting members in 3 open seats. Mercedes Brown is a Basalt resident who works in the outdoor lifestyle industry. She attended the January and February Post meetings and is interested in access and enjoyment of the Basalt parks and trails for all. Staff recommends her appointment to Post.
Okay. Mercedes, welcome. Would you like to say a few words and maybe talk to us about why you want to do this?
Sure. Yeah, so my name's Mercedes Brown. I have been a full-time resident in Old Town Basalt for a little over a year now. And as a frequent user of the trails, both on the Basalt side and the Willett side, when I saw this spot become available, I felt like it was a good opportunity for me to be involved in the community and be a part of a committee that works towards something that I find to be very important to preserve and work towards improving in the space. So that's why I was
Excellent.
interested.
We appreciate your interest and enthusiasm. Any questions from council?
Favorite trail?
What's that? Favorite trail? I love to rollerblade in the summer with my dog, and so I'll work from the bridge on this side of the highway and go over towards Willits and hit the Rio Grande and come back. So that's a favorite one of mine in the summer.
Nice.
Do you have brakes?
I do have brakes.
I hope so.
Yeah, and then I also live right over off of Tucker Lane, and so I use that trail in that neighborhood over there as well. I don't actually know the name of that one, but I do use that in the summer quite often.
Great. I'd entertain a motion if there are no questions.
Mayor, I move that the town council appoint Mercedes Brown to the Basalt Parks, Open Space, and Trails Committee for a 3-year term to end February 27th, 2027.
Second.
Second. Okay, been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mercedes, thank you very much. You've got some good company on there. It's a really good board now.
Yeah.
So good luck with it. Hope you enjoy it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So next item, public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 2, series of 2024. Ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, granting historic designation, site plan review, special review, and historic incentives for the construction of a basement under the miners cabin and conversion of the miners cabin into an accessory dwelling unit at 159 East Homestead Drive, Basalt, Colorado. James?
Ralph, if you would like to come up, please.
Didn't mean to time it so well.
No, perfect time. This is a public hearing and second reading of an ordinance on an application submitted by Rolf Frazier, requesting historic designation, special review, site plan review, and historic incentives to designate the property at 159 East Homestead Drive as historic and to convert the existing miner's cabin at the rear of the property into an accessory dwelling unit. As was discussed at the last meeting, The property subject to the application is the property at 159 East Homestead Drive. It's located right here on the map. It's a property of approximately 7,400 square foot and contains an existing single-family house that's near the Homestead Drive portion of the property. This house was built in the 1890s. It also contains a 490 square foot miner's cabin that was moved to the site in the early 1900s that's currently being used for storage. It's this yellow cabin that's off of the Luxinger stairs that go down to Midland Avenue. The applicant has recently renovated the main residence, and the miner's cabin doesn't currently have a foundation or running water, and the property is zoned R3TN. The proposal, as was identified at the last meeting, is for the applicant to designate the property as historic, which enables the protection of both of the structures against demolition in perpetuity, and it takes advantage of historic incentives that are afforded for historic properties to construct a basement under the current miner's cabin and then to convert it to an ADU. The miner's cabin, as was noted at the last meeting, was the first minister's house in Basalt, and they have this plaque on it for the historic walking tour. As I noted, the miner's cabin is at the back of the property, and they're proposing to put a basement under it and make it an ADU. In terms of the review process requires one round of review by the P&Z and Town Council, with P&Z making a recommendation to the council. In reviewing the application, staff had identified a series of discussion items that were in the P&Z packet, and we've got them on the screen here. Staff summarized these at first reading, and to touch on a couple of them just briefly, related to consistency with the master plan. Staff outlined a series of goals and objectives from the master plan that were in staff's memo to the P&Z, which encouraged the preservation of historic structures as well as incorporating ADUs into the fabric of existing neighborhoods. And the Planning and Zoning Commission felt that the proposal exhibited these goals and satisfied these goals. In terms of the historic designation of the property, staff strongly believes that the property warrants historic designation as the structures were built before 1900 and have historic significance. Also, staff finds that the proposed renovation of the miner's cabin is consistent with this historic integrity of the property, in that the applicant is removing an addition that was done in the late 1990s and restoring the property and the structure to its traditional form. Additionally, as I noted, a basement is proposed under the structure to help with the structural capabilities of the building. The council approved the ordinance on first reading at the last meeting with the direction that the applicant look at the potential to get grant funding in order to do a higher level of deed restriction than the RO deed restriction that is typically placed on ADUs in the town, which requires that one of the two units be resident occupied. And the applicant has done that. He's provided a letter that's in your packet, and he can speak to the conclusions of that. The draft ordinance still contains the requirement for the deed restriction, which is typically applied to ADUs in the town, which is that one of the two units has to be resident occupied. So this evening, staff would recommend hearing comments from the applicant, Ralph, and then also taking public comments and providing council discussion. If you're comfortable with the ordinance, you could approve it on second reading. Rolf, do you have some comments for the council?
Thanks, James, for the summary and update. As requested by all of you 2 weeks ago, I spoke with various entities about potential grant funding or lending or incentives, and I believe that James has added them to the packet, my findings. I think there's a few pages there of that. James, is that something we can look at
Yes.
rather than me shooting from the hip? The first recommendation that Ms. Hottle advised was the Eagle County ADU incentive. So I familiarized myself with that and then gave them a call. They were very helpful, and the findings were pretty. It is a great program, as you said. Basically, it's a great incentive, offering a loan of $100,000 with the interest deferred for 3 years, and then interest, I believe, 2%. 2% thereafter until you dispose of the asset or whatever. Right. So that's very appealing, very helpful. It's, I think, designed to encourage people who might have a space that they can convert. And I did some numbers, and obviously that would be very helpful. Unfortunately, I also spoke with Alpine Bank to get an update of lending costs. So that's something we can look at in due course. I researched the historic incentives and grants. I think there were 9 of those, and of the 9, 1 could apply. And I think there's a loan. Oh, there it is. Yeah, a loan of. James, can you go up just a little bit? Yeah, a loan of $40,000 available with an interest rate of 1%. However, it does require that income of the owner and occupant needs to be less than $59,000, which is fine. However, I then of course have to get a construction loan from someone like Alpine Bank. Alpine Bank will certainly want me to be showing that I can generate funds that are enough to cover a loan of over $1 million. Interest rates, I mistakenly had understood from my last conversation with them to be reducing from 8%. The trend would expect to be at 7%. And so I did my calculations based on 7%. So when we factor in, the whole budget, once you've got architecture, most of that's already spent, excavation, stabilization, foundations, and then using current trend of $700 a square foot for construction mid-valley, which would be a good number to get it at. A lot of people are spending more than that. Then we're looking at a budget of over $1 million. So if I could contribute the $100,000 from the Eagle County for the ADU, that would help. However, I can't provide off-street parking as we've discussed. So they told me I was no longer eligible. So that was unfortunate. But if I go to Alpine Bank for funding, then I'm looking at interest of $7,000 a month based on a 7% rate. However, I got an update on Monday yesterday, and it's actually 9% right now. So that just ruins my numbers. Makes me look even more like a deer in the headlights at this project. But who knows the future, right? We can hope. Interest rates, we all hope, are coming down. But for the time being, my figure of $7,000 a month is, that's an extra $20,000 a year. So quick maths, let's round up to $8,000 a month. If I was able to do the ADU incentive program and rent it per their guidelines and rules, the maximum rent a month would be $3,076 a month. So I would be paying $5,000 a month to be a good member of our community so that we can rent this out to someone in the community. And I can't afford to do that, I'm afraid. So yeah, long story short, I think the conclusion is basically the project is not viable if the rental income is restricted in any way. And I don't like to say this, but it's touch and go whether it's viable even without a rental restriction. So I'm excited about the project. I hope some of you share that excitement too. I very much would like to take care of this former minister's cabin, and at the moment this is my best plan and best way to do it, and hopefully the numbers stack up when I'm able to do it, and if you agree to that. So there's the update, and over to you.
I appreciate you taking the time to do that, especially within 2 weeks. Thank you. And I'm sorry that it didn't turn out better.
It was encouraging, honestly, in the broader sense that there's an ADU program, and perhaps I will tell more people about it, people who could convert a basement or whatever for it, because I think it's a great program.
Was the $700 a foot predicated on takeoffs of actual materials, or was that just sort of an industry round number?
It's an industry round number, where obviously people with bigger budgets than me are spending more than that in the Mid-Valley.
Yeah.
Not many are spending less than that. To do it for 600 a square foot, you'd be really, your finishes would be questionable. So, my hope is that, as some of you may know, I have been running a construction company for a while, and my hope is that I can, create a significant savings. But the biggest cost for all of us is the cost of labor, because of the cost of housing and the cost of everything around here. So who knows if I'll be able to achieve any kind of decent savings. Something, but still, we're talking about over $1 million, so whatever saving I make on that will be.
Are you pretty confident of excavation costs? Do you have tests out there? Do you know what you're getting into?
Yeah, unfortunately, I do know what I'm getting into. It's a really boring and laborious process, particularly when it involves a limited access, so smaller mini excavation type stuff and so on. It just takes an owner occupant like myself who can patiently deal with that, because underpinning a structure is just really slow work, and it needs to be done carefully.
Okay.
So.
Questions, council, for Rolf?
Thanks for looking into all that and illustrating it. It was pretty interesting. Appreciate you being earnest about it. The only question I had was around parking. I see the condition in there. I know it says, kind of what you can't do, in the sense that there's time limitations, et cetera. How prescriptive are you planning on being in the documentation you give tenants? Because I feel like they'll need direction more than knowing what not to do. You know what I mean?
Fair. I think there's we all know, right? Everybody here's rented a place or stayed in a hotel, and there's always guidelines and so on. The best we can do is give them guidelines and requirements, and of course the intention is that we're living in the main house, and therefore we're actually kind of involved in all of that. So the access to the cabin will be along Luxinger Lane, either from Homestead or from this side, next to the gallery. So it is a pedestrian access to the cabin. So if someone's driving, they are going to park up on Homestead. But, you know, in whatever way we present the cabin, the final completed cabin for rent, it's going to need to expressly encourage the fact that they don't need a car. I mean, it's such a great location to be able to walk down Luxinger and go straight to the bus stop and go skiing, or go straight across and go to whoever you're fishing with, go across there, meet your guide, and obviously for all the evening entertainment as well. So I don't know. It's the answer to your question is twofold, because of what we write down and what we insist on while living there, and then the reality. One of the nice things about the reality of where we live on Homestead is that from the two brick old stores, you know, that face each other across Homestead, that way towards the river, I think we're the only ones who struggle to have off-street parking. Everyone else has off-street parking. Our next door neighbor is the back of the hotel. So there's, I don't know what that is, maybe 75 feet, 60 feet of fence that is not a property. So most of the people who park up there are our friends and work colleagues, many of whom will be in this room. Very few of the people who live on that section of Homestead actually park on a Homestead unless they happen to just not be bothered to park in their driveway. So we're not feeling any pressure currently, but I respect, with all the plans that we have for, you know, downtown and the you know, the market and everything, there's always going to be a demand. But in our little microcosm there's very little pressure amongst ourselves.
I'm sorry, I missed the last meeting, but do we have agreement on language in the RO deed restriction? Do we draft that, or does Rolf draft that?
We have a form that we use
Okay, good.
that we'll fine tune for this project. Yeah.
And maybe to respond a little bit more to David's question, staff would need to review the language that is being provided in the lease per the restrictions. So,
What is the homestead restriction?
the parking restriction, I think it's no parking on the roadway, travel lanes. So basically, you can park in inappropriate places to park on Homestead.
Like in the dirt on the side?
Yeah, dirt shovel.
And Homestead is not going to be monitored when we implement the 2-hour parking, correct?
That was an option that we explored with them, so it could be.
Okay.
If we wanted to expand that.
Well, and conceivably, if we do put 2-hour parking on Midland, that might
Sure, it could put
encourage
pressure.
people to park on Homestead.
That's right.
Especially by Luxinger, when you can come up and down the steps.
Right, yeah, so that's something to consider.
Since you brought that up, may I have the audacity to ask, is the council considering permits of any kind for residents?
I'll take that. So we've been looking at a parking management company that can help us with parking on sort of Midland in the downtown area. One of the services they offer is that they can do parking permits, like if they went up into the neighborhood, for example, and how they enforce that is through license plates. And so, say at your house, you might get 2 parking permits or something like that. So I think the ability is there. We just haven't pulled the trigger on that. We're kind of going to start with Midland, and then we'll see. This is the nice thing about this company, is they can sort of modify in real time and be pretty nimble in kind of reacting to unintended consequences, like
Right.
all of a sudden a bunch of people parking on Homestead. So it'll be a little bit iterative, but the potential is there.
It's because of the review that my project has had with planning and now with you. I've had a surprising number of conversations about that because parking was one of the issues that my situation faces. And so it's been surprising how many of the neighbors have brought up that they feel that a owner's permit situation would be an easy solution, or not an easy solution, sorry, a solution that they have an appetite for.
Yeah.
So, if you care.
Any further questions, council, for Ralph or for James? This is a public hearing, this is a second reading, so at this point, I would like to open the floor for any public comment that may exist for anybody in the audience or anyone calling in. So anyone in the audience like to address council on this topic? Pam, do we have anybody, or James in the waiting room?
No one's raised their hands.
If anybody's on the Zoom call that would like to make a comment on the 159 East Homestead application, if you'd raise your hand. Looks like we have none.
That's it, okay. Well, with that, I would entertain other further questions or a motion, however the council prefers.
Mayor, I move that the town council adopt ordinance number 2, series of 2024 on second reading.
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded. Pam, please call the roll.
Absolutely. Let's begin with Ryan Slack.
Yes.
Thank you, Ryan. Bill Kane,
Yes.
Dieter Schindler,
Yes.
David Knight,
Yes.
Angela Anderson,
Yes.
Elise Hoddle.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank
All
you.
right, thanks. Good luck, Ralph. That's a noble undertaking. I hope you're successful with it. So,
Thank you.
Good
Appreciate the
going. Thank you.
encouragement. And thanks for your time, everyone. Thank you.
so next up is, this is continued public hearing of resolution number 38, series of 23. Resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, approving a sketch plan review, sketch environmentally sensitive area, ESA review, sketch reach 2 of the floodplain, sketch plan, PUD approval, and associated development revenue actions for the Jadwin Black Mountain development at 431 Emma Road, Basalt, Colorado. James, bring us up
Mayor, I
to
will
date.
be recusing myself.
I miss all the fun.
I know.
James.
Thank you. This is a continued public hearing on the Jadwin Black Mountain Sketch Plan Development Application to construct 64 dwelling units, 12 short-term rental cabins on the Jadwin property at 431 Emma Road, which is the 9-acre parcel located just to the west of the Red Barn on Emma Road, and you see it here on your screen. The application was last discussed at the end of January by the town council. At the meeting in January, the town council heard a presentation of revisions to the proposal from the applicants, as well as heard public comments and provided discussion. Council had comments on various aspects of the proposal and ultimately tabled the review of the application. The main topics that the council discussed and identified for further consideration are included in your staff memo, and I've got them up here on the screen. They include community benefit, affordable housing, density and site coverage, the need for the short-term rental cabins, and then traffic and intersection improvements. And so since the last meeting in January, the applicants have further revised the application to respond to some of the comments that were provided in January. So this evening, staff would suggest allowing the applicants to detail their further revisions that they've made to the application. And then they will also have their traffic engineer address the traffic questions from the last meeting. And then staff would like a couple of minutes after the applicant presents to address several items after the applicant's presentation. Staff will be brief in those comments, understanding that we anticipate that there'll be significant public participation again on this. And then after staff comments, staff would recommend asking clarification questions and taking public comments. Ultimately, there is a draft resolution that's in your packet for consideration. Couple of other reminders on the process before the applicants present their revisions. The applicant is proposing a PUD, which requires 3 rounds of review by the P&Z and Town Council, which would be a sketch plan, a preliminary plan, and a final plan review. The applicant is in the first round of those 3 rounds of review, called the sketch plan, where the general concept of the application is evaluated to determine if it has merit for further review and more detailed review. The sketch plan doesn't provide any vested property rights, and also it should be noted that the project involves an annexation request, and the town's policy is not to annex property until a final development plan is approved. So any annexation would not occur until in conjunction with a final development plan approval. So with that said, I would like to turn it over to the applicants to present the revisions that they've made to the application, as well as to have their traffic engineer address some of the traffic topics. We have Michael Forrest here this evening as part of the applicant group. Michael?
Thank you, James. Hi, everyone. Council members, staff, and members of the public here tonight. I want to start by thanking you for the opportunity again to present our project called Black Mountain Basalt, and we're very excited about how this is all coming together. I want to start tonight by addressing the specific concerns and comments that were made by council members at our last meeting on January 23rd. The first item was that council requested that we remove all glamping and tent site pads from our plan. We are here today to report that we've listened and we've agreed to remove all of the glamping tent pads from our sketch plan. The next item up that we heard from council was to reduce the overall density of the site. So over the course of this sketch plan process, we've made 4 major changes now to reduce overall density. The first was at prior meetings when we removed the development of the dogleg and the daycare center. Second, as I just mentioned, we are now removing the glamping tent pads, which has also resulted in parking and paved area reductions and the impact to the river shoreline. And then lastly, to reduce further density, we've agreed to reduce the number of residential units from 72 to 64. The removal of the glamping and the reduction in residential units has resulted in an overall decrease in occupant and visitor traffic and the associated parking needs, resulting in the removal of 6 parking stalls from the development, allowing for additional open space and naturally vegetated areas where paving was previously proposed. Additionally, some excess parking was retained in the River Cabin vacation rental parking area to allow for 11 flex parking spaces above those required for guests. 7 flex parking spaces remain in the housing area to allow for additional guest parking, with the goal of alleviating traffic concerns through a decrease in density and providing excess flex parking to alleviate concerns of visitor parking along Emma Road, which was raised at prior meetings. The next concern we heard was, can you change the housing mix? Change the housing mix, and can you reduce the number of studios? Here again, we listened, and we've reduced the number of studios now to 13, resulting in a wider selection of unit types. And as you can see from the graphic here, our unit mix has changed. We're now proposing a more balanced unit mix with 60% of the units now 2 and 3 bedroom to support local families, which is something we heard last time. The next comment was, can we provide category 2 AMI units for sale? Here we have some exciting news to report. And I know that my mother, who's listening online and watching, who's a retired public school teacher and principal, would be very happy to hear this, that we've signed a letter of intent with the Roaring Fork School District to provide up to 4 units of Category 2 for sale housing, which will include 2 one-bedrooms and 2 two-bedrooms. And we're also working with Blue Lake Preschool to help with some of their housing needs. In addition, as illustrated here in the graph, we've modified the overall mix of AMI categories as well. Next up was we had proposed to prioritize the free market units for locals for 30 days. One of the concerns we heard was 30 days is not enough, and quite frankly, we agree. We're calling this program the First Tracks Housing Program for locals, and we've agreed now to offer all free market units of housing, whether for sale or rental, for a period of 90 days instead of 30, to people who work for a physical address, physical business, or nonprofit in the Roaring Fork Valley. With these combined programs, 50% deed restricted affordable, and this First Tracks program, we believe there's a strong likelihood that we may sell or rent all 64 units of housing now to the local workforce, which has, quite frankly, been the intent of this project from day one. We've also proposed that the town of Basalt administer the First Tracks pre-approval process, and we will continue to work with the town and staff to further clarify these details during the preliminary approval process, should council move us to this next step. The next comment we heard was about the river cabins. And with that, I'm going to throw it to Heather Henry, who is our landscape architect and consultant, to speak about the cabins.
Hi, everybody. Thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, fine.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Michael. Heather Henry with Connect One Design. As Michael mentioned in our last get-together, we were asked about the idea of, I think, the river cabins and that concept of mixed uses, how those might operate on the property, how the cabins kind of would look, feel, operate adjacent to the residential, both new residential and existing neighbors. So I'm primarily going to talk about the physical aspects of that and then kind of pass it back to Michael as he talks a little bit about the management of the cabins and that idea. So I want to kind of remember and frame this a little bit, that the concept of mixed uses really shouldn't be new to all of us. Now, normally we think about it in this vertical way. So commercial, office, retail on the ground floor, and residential above. You know, hospitality or lodging might be somewhere in that mix, right? Above commercial. Similarly, we also think about in Basalt, we have the Aspinall, we have the Basalt Inn. You know, those places are operating right next to offices and commercial and residential above. And so really thinking about mixed uses shouldn't be new to us. That said, it does require often very intentional design and consideration. So I'll go over just again some of those like physical intentional design components. So remember, we have these three distinct areas. We have housing and homes that, yeah, you can see Ramsey will run the little cursor. And then we have our open space and we have our river cabins. The intentionality of the cabin location, honestly, was purposeful in the master plan and purposeful for us. We see it as a win-win. So it is a way to transition from the housing to this lower density feel, something that's much gentler on the land, again, much more scattered. It starts to open up. There's a lot more open space, vegetation, trees, etc. And it really transitions to homes and some of the uses to the west. There's also a significant natural buffer on our western boundary. So the ditch, the trees, heavy vegetation, it really forced us to create a setback, a really large setback from that western boundary to this cabin cluster. And that said, in our design, we also turned everything internal. So there are no windows on that side facing west of those cabins. Their outdoor living spaces face internally. Number 8 shows our outdoor gathering area, again, is very internal to the cabins. So they all feel like they get to be visitors and see each other and gather together. But again, it's very internal to that cluster. On the other side of the cabin cluster, we use the pond and trees, vegetation, Some added a lot that's already there to then separate the cabin cluster from the open space itself. So again, you have this very natural boundary that we get to use just by celebrating what's already out there on the property. And then our roads, so thinking about our internal structure of circulation, vehicular, pedestrian, etc. So we really use the roads to create these distinct areas for our new uses. The second, call it the second entrance to the property as you head west. That is what would be primarily the entrance for the cabins. Obviously that moves to the north and then kind of swings over to run east-west, where you see like 11, number 11 and 10. So now with this circulation, we've really created our homes and the housing cluster, and again, the cabins sort of above that boundary that we use for vehicles. There's a distinct entrance for vehicles when they get to kind of, if they're coming, they're a visitor to the cabin, yeah, exactly where that cursor is. That's a very distinct entry. So that's going to be where visitors to the cabins start their experience and what that feels like, and being able to park and make their way to the cabin. So the parking, the vehicular circulation, and the pedestrians for the residential is very separate because of that path that we get to use there with that distinct road location. Now let's talk a little bit about number 9. So as we came onto this project, some things had been located and we really questioned the location of this. This is our amenity cabin. So this is where folks that are in the cabins get to kind of check, they might check in, they're gonna grab some coffee. Think about it as the lobby of your hotel. Well, that's what number 9 is. So we put it out to the team, is that the right place, et cetera? And we really turned it around as a group and said, no, part of what that's doing is, again, actually creating the mixed uses, but some of the separation. So some distinctness to our areas. And we ended up really liking that location for that reason. And then we have a series of outdoor spaces. So number 11, while this looks much like a road, it's really it's a fire lane access. So this is where private vehicles will not be driving on a daily basis, but all of our emergency vehicles can circulate through the property. We said, well, let's double up those uses, right? Let's kind of make that an outdoor space as well. So it'll flow out from the amenity cabin and also be a place that the residents can use. So we're thinking about it as like 4 square painted out, a basketball hoop, etc. So this idea that, there's some of these gathering spaces outside that, create both the separation, but also gathering spaces. And number 10 is another. Now, this is just distinguishing our parking area, but this is where the public can also enter the property, park, and use the trails. So use the trails in the open space, maybe make their way to the river. So you can see how number 9, 10, 11, these spaces are utilizing both the amenity cabin and the outdoor space around the pond and between the cabins and homes to kind of create this fulcrum, right? Where residents, visitors, others from the public, they can meet, gather, intersect. It really serves as a buffer, a transition, and a meeting space. It kind of does all of these things. So the strength of this kind of lodging in our mind from a physical perspective is it really gives this feel of small residential spaces. It creates this transition. We have the separation, but then we have all the benefits of this, the vitality and just the mixed uses of open space, some public visiting, homes and housing and residential, and visitors that get to experience all of what's great about the mixing of those kinds of folks on a piece of property like this. And that's really the overall benefit of having these kinds of mixed uses. Thanks.
Thanks, Heather. So as Heather mentioned, in terms of management, we are planning on having a full-time manager. We're calling them also an experience coordinator to assist guests with all their needs. And we are providing housing on site for this manager. I also want to just point out that, as you folks know, we are a local development group. I'm here with my 2 partners, Bridger and Coulter Smith, that have lived here their entire life. and we have every intention and desire to make this the very best it can be, for the dual purpose of fueling our 50% deed-restricted affordable housing units, and for ensuring that this is a successful, small addition to the hospitality fabric of Basalt. Bridger, my partner who created the vision for the river cabins and designed the plan, really took advantage of the beauty of the location and the natural bell shape of the land and determined that it was ideal for small cabin structures as opposed to one large hotel building, just as the master plan suggested. We really want these river cabins to become a one-of-a-kind small addition to the town of Basalt's tourism offerings. Lastly, but most importantly, as you, Mr. Mayor, postulated in the last meeting, the river cabins are, in fact, a critical financial component of this entire Black Mountain project. That has enabled us to reach the 50% deed-restricted affordable housing we've proposed. Without it, I honestly would feel uncomfortable standing before you here today saying that this is a feasible project. Next up is traffic. We've submitted a revised traffic memorandum from Rich Fulmer from FHU Engineering that shows that the reduction in density has reduced trip generation and significantly reduced traffic. Rich, who is on Zoom, is now going to present some of his findings of the study.
Rich, if you unmute, you should be able to speak to the council.
He's going to appear up here on the,
Okay.
as a panelist, or should.
1 second, Rich.
Rich, if you unmute, you can speak to the council.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. My name is Rich Fulmer. I'm a transportation engineer with a company called Felsberg, Holt, and Ullevig.
Rich, could you speak up a little bit? It's going to be hard for us to follow you. If you can get closer to your computer or mic.
All right. Sure, I'll try to do that. Is that better?
There, that sounds a little better.
Yeah, Rich, that sounds better. Thank you.
My name is Rich. Okay. My name is Rich Fulmer. I'm with a company called Felsberg, Holt, and Ullevig. We're located in Greenwood Village at 6400 South Fiddler's Green Circle. Sorry about any video. I've had problems with my video in the past, and I don't want to create any problems with any of this presentation. I'd like to take the time to discuss two basic elements. The traffic analysis report. Our most recent one is from September of 2023. And that had been revised based on comments that we received from a consultant for the town of Basalt. And then I'd also like to provide some input related to specific questions that were brought up by one of your residents. In general, traffic studies for any land use typically have three basic components. We evaluate existing conditions to start. We look at future background conditions with other growth that's not related to a particular project. And then we look at the future development conditions based on the characteristics of the proposed project. For Black Mountain, we recorded traffic volumes at 4 intersections and calculated average vehicle delay during what we term the AM and PM peak hours, which are your typical morning and evening commute times when you're typically heading to and from work. For existing conditions, we found that these intersections are operating well, except for movements that are onto or trying to cross State Highway 82, which those movements operate with a fairly high level of delay. For background conditions, we looked at 2 future time periods. One being the build out of Black Mountain, and then a second future planning horizon, which is identified as year 2046. The existing traffic volumes were increased, starting with the information from CDOT's OTIS database, and OTIS stands for Online Transportation Information System. We used that first at State Highway 82, but then used our engineering judgment for other streets along Emma Road relative to those projections, and came upon recognizing that it's probably much less than what's going to occur on 82. And so we set on about 1/2 of the growth that was projected for State Highway 82. And for those future background conditions, we found that the town intersections will continue to operate well, but State Highway 82 is going to begin to operate very poorly. For the development scenario, and when we looked at future conditions for Black Mountain, we used the proposed land use plan and information from the Institute of Transportation Engineers to estimate future traffic volumes. They were assigned through the local street network based on existing travel patterns. For that scenario, at that time, in September, there were 4 different land use types. There were the residential dwelling units, there were the tent pads, the rental cabins, and a daycare center. With that development scenario, we still concluded that at build out of Black Mountain, that town intersections will continue to operate acceptably during those peak hour conditions. Now, everything I've said so far has been just a summary of our September 23 report. But since that time, and it was just noted, Black Mountain has removed a couple of their land uses, the daycare center and their tent pads. Well, that results in quite a bit of reduction in projected vehicle trips for the project. We're anticipating that's a reduction of 29% over the course of an entire day, and almost 50% during those AM and PM peak hours. And what that does is reduce Black Mountain's impact to the surrounding street network and intersections. Relative to some questions that were posed by one of your residents, I wanted to focus on 2 basic elements, 2 main issues. One is related to the capacity of Emma Road. At build out of Black Mountain, it's projected that there will be about 4,500 vehicles per day on Emma Road, and about 250 of those will be related to Black Mountain. But keep in mind that those levels are over the course of an entire day. Many 2-lane streets can accommodate much more than 4,500 vehicles per day, sometimes greater than or in the range of 15,000 to 18,000 vehicles per day. But that capacity is based on certain factors such as the posted speed limit, the number of access points, or the physical elements that compose that street. But what is important for us to understand relative to capacity on Emma Road is where do motorists, where are they required to stop? Well, as you know, residents east and west along Emma Road will need to stop at Midland Avenue, and there is some slowing that needs to occur as they proceed through the roundabout. But even considering those opportunities to stop, town intersections are still expected to operate acceptably during peak hour conditions, with even less delay during off-peak times. The other issue was vehicle queuing, particularly any queuing that might occur from congestion at State Highway 82 in the southbound direction of Basalt Avenue, which could impact operations at the roundabout. Well, keep in mind that there are several routes for residents of Black Mountain to get to and from where they need to be. If you are at Black Mountain and you want to travel to the west, you can get right on 82 without going through the traffic signal at 82, through, via the slip ramp or through the roundabout. There's opportunities for business and recreation and other travel along Midland Avenue. And then, of course, some do need to access the roundabout either to State Highway 82 or to some of the retail businesses on the east side of the roundabout. But the critical movements are those ones that are in the southbound direction, either the left turn movements or the through movements that are for people that want to cross 82. Black Mountain is going to contribute a very small amount to those movements because of some of the other opportunities for circulation. We're projecting that only 6 additional vehicles would be in that southbound left turn lane or through lane at State Highway 82 during the AM peak hour. That's only 1 additional vehicle on average every 10 minutes. And during the PM peak hour, that is even less, and it's only 3 additional vehicles, approximately 1 additional vehicle every 20 minutes. So in summary for that, as such, the potential queuing that might occur at the State Highway 82 intersection is really only slightly affected by Black Mountain, and any future queuing that might increase is really related to existing volume or growth from other development or increase in vehicles that are not related to Black Mountain. That's all I needed to say. Obviously, I'm here to answer any questions that you may have this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. With that, I'm going to ask Stephanie from Sopris Engineering to come up and just briefly talk about the intersections.
Good evening. Nobody ever likes to say my last name because they don't know how. Stephanie Helfenbein, Sopris Engineering. Like you said, I get to talk to you about the intersection improvements associated with our project that came about based upon your third-party consultant's review of our project, traffic study, staff's concerns, as well as some concerns expressed by the fire district regarding the Emma Road, Midland Avenue intersection, as well as the Emma Road slip lane. As requested by staff related to the right turn lane on Emma Road, we prepared 2 different conceptual designs for that intersection. One has the right turn lane ending at the west end of the driveway to 251 Emma Road, and the other extends to the east side of the entrance, adding extra queuing length. We worked with the town of Basalt as well as the fire district in reviewing those intersections, and following the sketch plan approval, we'll move forward with the preferred configuration, further that design and coordination, and that final design will be included in our preliminary plan application. The Emma slip lane intersection came about because the fire district currently doesn't have the ability to maneuver the turn from Emma Road from the slip lane onto Emma Road with their aerial truck. We had a site visit last fall with Brooke Stott, James, and myself to witness them not being able to make this turn in and then also out without having to get in the other lane or make a very slow turn. So following that site visit, I went back to the drawing board and put together a conceptual design with their template to show what had to be done to make them be able to safely make that turn. And essentially it's slightly realigning the intersection, widening it, and making the radiuses bigger. What came about during those discussions as well was that we learned that the fire district does not need to make a right turn onto the slip lane coming out of the Emma Road onto 82. They would go to the roundabout or go back to the fire station. But Brooke did have concern, and I know that other people have had concern over this as well, over larger delivery trucks coming out of the road, trying to make that turn, not knowing that you really can't do it, or didn't know that they have another route to get out to the roundabout. And so in looking at that, we have to modify the landscape island that's on the southeast side of the intersection, add asphalt to it essentially. So I reached out to CDOT to see, number one, get their sign off on the conceptual realignment of the Emma slip lane intersection, as well as to see if they would be okay with us making some modifications to the landscape island. And conceptually, they were fine with that, knowing that they're going to have more time and input moving forward, since we'd have to put together an access permit application for that intersection, as well as work with the town and the fire district to finalize that design through the preliminary plan application. And I think that's all I have for you tonight.
Great.
Thank you, Stephanie. As detailed in the 2020 Basalt Master Plan, the benefits of planning a housing community near where people work and close to mass transit is very compelling. Numerous studies have shown that when people live near their workplaces, they are much more likely to use alternative modes of transportation, such as mass transit, bicycles, or walking. One such study conducted by the American Public Transportation Association found that residents living within a half mile of public transportation were more than twice as likely to use it as their primary mode of commuting compared to those living farther away. As we've mentioned in prior meetings, we are partnering with WeCycle. A 2022 annual report by WeCycle concluded that 47% of WeCyclers said that they used WeCycle to connect to and from RAFTA. And in the Mid-Valley, 28% of rides began at a BRT stop and 29% ended at a BRT stop. Before I conclude our presentation, I want to take a moment, if I may, to just reflect back on the Basalt Master Plan and its role in our design of this project. The 2020 Basalt Master Plan has been our guiding light since we began planning this project over 4 years ago. Conformance with the master plan goals and objectives has not only guided us, but we have asked ourselves the following question over and over again at every single decision point we've had to make as a development team. What does the master plan say, and what is the goal of the master plan? So with that, I wanted to address some of the goals of the master plan and how we as a development team delivered on those goals. The first goal was a mixed-use development adjacent to downtown and Old Town. As you've seen, we've proposed a mixed-use development project with 50% deed-restricted affordable housing, priority for locals for all housing, hospitality river cabins, open space, recreation trails, and a donation towards daycare or another community public use. Another master plan goal, and quite frankly our goal from day one, was to preserve open space. To that end, 62% of the property is green space and 49% of the property is permanently dedicated open space. Another master plan goal, maintain sensitivity to the river shoreline. What's our response? We've agreed to protect aquatic and riparian habitats from development-related impacts and provide a comprehensive approach to watershed planning. We've agreed to further examine protecting the Ute ladies' tresses, orchids found on the property. And as you've heard tonight, all glamping tent pads are out. Another goal of the master plan, protect the wetlands and floodplain. To verify the wetlands are not impacted by the proposed development, we hired a wetlands consultant to map the wetlands back in the summer of 2017. That mapping confirmed the development was outside the wetland area. In addition, current mapping and studies have indicated the floodplain has not expanded. In particular, our plans for the project are outside of the defined floodplain. The Colorado Water Conservation Board's new report, slated for mapping this summer, is expected to remove additional floodplain areas in the site, and it's something that James addressed at our last meeting. A couple more quick things. Master plan goal, protect wildlife migration corridors. Our response, we will incorporate wildlife-friendly measures designed to mitigate potential negative impacts to wildlife, and we will create a landscape plan that reduces the potential for human-bear conflict. Now these I'm just going to run through very quickly because we've talked about them. Master plan goal, mix of housing units. Our response, studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, and townhomes. Master plan goal, affordable housing. The town code requires 20%. We've proposed 50% plus the First Tracks program. Master plan goal, lower density. This is kind of interesting because it kind of says two things in the master plan. One point, it talks about lower density, but then another point, it talks about much higher density for the Jadwin Stott parcel up to 180 units. As we've proposed tonight, we've reduced the units from 72 to 64, which is more than a 10% reduction from our last meeting in January. One last point on the master plan, because this question has been asked of me personally, both in public and privately. Why Jadwin? Well, page 80 of the master plan states, why Jadwin? And the response is, and I quote, the history of land development and conservation surrounding the parcel has created pressure on the land to be developed, and the remaining undeveloped parcel offers opportunities to meet many of the town's goals, including job creation, envisioning a new mixed-use development adjacent to downtown Basalt, accompanied by open space conservation and supplying a mix of housing types, close quote. Mr. Mayor and members of council, in conclusion, I believe that we've complied with the master plan in its entirety. I think in some respects we've exceeded it. And tonight we are asking for your support to approve our sketch plan so that we can sit down with our affordable housing partners like Pitkin County, Eagle County, the Roaring Fork Fire District, Aspen Valley Ski Club, the Roaring Fork School District, Blue Lake Preschool, and the Aspen Valley Hospital to sign binding agreements to create this affordable housing and to continue working with council and the public during the preliminary plan approval process to make this project a reality. The simple fact is we cannot go any further with these partners to deliver this affordable housing without your support tonight. So with that, I thank you for your time and we'll certainly answer any questions. James?
Thank you. This is a public hearing, so it's our standard practice here to hear from the public, and then I'm sure we'll have some questions from council for the applicants and maybe a few for the staff. So at this point, I would invite any members of the public that would like to address council on the Jadwin Black Mountain parcel development sketch plan to come on up and address council and see if there are also any that are calling in. So the floor is open for anybody that would like to address council on the topic. John?
Thank you, John Young. The last meeting I attended, the most powerful thing I heard was from the father. He called in, said, I've got an 8-year-old, 10-year-old children. I want them to live close to me when they grow up. He was here, moved here in 2017. That hit right to my heart because I had that discussion with my daughter 25, 28 years ago when we had a father-daughter date in Denver. And I said to her, we went to a baseball game, we went out to dinner, and I said, Jessie, this is likely what your life will be like. You're gonna live in a city, you're gonna have your friends here, you're gonna go out to the bars at night, etc. She said, Daddy, I don't wanna live like that. I wanna live where we are. And I said, that's not possible, because the housing, even at that time, was out of reach. One of the consulting jobs I had was to present an affordable housing project in Silverthorne. The room was packed with people who were anti. They thought it was going to be a drug-infested place. They were very worried about inviting those people into their midst. So I had a simple thing. I just said, how many of you have children? About half raised their hand. I said, how many of you would like to have your children live close to you when they grow up? Same half. How many of you have grandchildren? Less, but they raised them. How many of you would like to have your grandchildren live by you? Raised their hands, unanimous. The mood of the audience calmed down when they realized that there wasn't going to be those housing opportunities for their children and grandchildren unless they as a town council and they as a community did something. This project is unbelievable. I've done 800 affordable housing units in my career. This is one of the finest projects I've seen. First, in terms of the overall density, in terms of 50%, who does that? No one. Okay, I don't know of another project where 50% has been the equation that the developer has offered up. This project is excellent for Basalt. It truly is. It's excellent for the Roaring Fork Fire District, whom I represent. We are looking forward to placing some of our critical people in these units. We have the money to do it. We need the project to put them in. This is our project that we think we can wholeheartedly get behind. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Anyone else like to address council on the proposal? Please come on up and tell us your name, rank, serial number, and address.
Good morning, good evening. My name is Susan Sullivan, and I've been helping with Keep Basalt Special. I live in Missouri Heights right now, but when I moved to this area, just about exactly in 2014, it was April 1st, it was Basalt. I love Basalt. I'm gonna be buried in Basalt. I'm not here to talk about land use or anything else. I'm here to talk about what you've got and what you need to keep. When I arrived here almost 10 years ago, I took half a pay cut to move. Rented out our house that we lived in for 25 years, left my extended family, and drove over 2,000 miles to realize my dream of living in the beautiful Rockies. Face it, ski country. Basalt did not disappoint. We walked downtown from our Elk Run rental house, overflowing with joy and the freedom of escaping the DC area where we lived for 25 years. I walked into Heather's restaurant, right into her welcoming arms. I was home. That first year and the years to follow were pure magic. Neighbors hanging out in the street after dinner, talking and laughing, tossing a ball, walking to the bus stop, along the babbling frying pan with my dog. I could take my dog to work here. Walking through town, visiting with so many friendly people and merchants, Basalt was a dream come true and was everything I'd worked so hard to experience, so completely different. No, Basalt isn't for everybody. You can't just show up here and expect to make it. This is an area of adventurers and survivors. You have to be prepared and have resources, and most of all, be nimble. I realized early on that if I wanted to realize my dream of living here, I'd have to work in the big city most of my life and bring my earnings here. Even now, I wonder if they'll last. I've lived all over the country, and there is no place better or more special than Basalt, Colorado. You can go anywhere else in this country and find lots of condos and parking lots and turning lanes and strip malls and chain stores, but you won't find anywhere like Basalt. You all know this. There's no other place in the world quite like Basalt, not just the town, but its location between the two rivers, white water right through town, and the people. Do you know what you have here? You may call this development progress. I don't call it progress. It's turning Basalt into every other suburb in this nation. And that's why people are against it, period. I collected all the signatures on the petition, and this is the underlying sentiment under those signatures.
That's your friendly reminder that you hit your 3 minutes, so if you could wind it up.
Ask
I would
yourselves
appreciate
if
that.
there's no value in preserving the unique and truly special places. Is it really all about feeding the corporate beast? What is life really about? Certainly not ruining one of the great western towns, our lovely Basalt, Colorado, USA. That's all.
Thank you for your comments. Leroy, are you coming up here? Okay.
Well, the last time I stood here, I was promoting a project behind Basalt High School, Basalt Vista, urging the town of Basalt to support that project. And reluctantly, they finally decided that they were going to support it. And look what we ended up having.
Yeah.
Place for teachers to live. And
It's a gem.
I'm here tonight to urge the town to support this project too. Number one, it's pretty much follows exactly what the master plan wanted for that area. And given the fact that this may be one of the last opportunities that we have to offer housing for employees with families that makes the town of Basalt what it is. Families going to schools. And also I'd like to urge to give my support to the river cabins too. What a unique experience that would be. Some people don't like to come to visit and live or stay in a hotel, but to stay in a cabin, what a delight that would be. I think these things will be full up 12 months out of the year. Like I say, transit-oriented development has always been the goal of the councils I was on. And this is really a prime project that lends itself to be transit-oriented development because it's near the transit stops and it's near downtown. And, excuse me, it's just, it's probably the best use for this property that I could imagine, other than leaving it like it is. But leaving it like it is, what does that really accomplish? So I urge the town to support this and move it along through the approval process. Thanks.
Thanks, Leroy. Anyone else like to address council? Come on up.
Hi, I'm Megan Hartman. I'm the principal at Basalt High School.
John Osperman, principal, Basalt Middle.
Grant Waller, principal at Basalt Elementary.
And we're not here to support any specific project. We're just here to advocate for housing on behalf of the teachers in our Basalt schools. The nearest teacher housing that the school district has is in Willits. We have plenty of teachers who are in the district housing in Carbondale, in Glenwood, and we're asking them to drive by those communities, drive by those schools to serve our children. I have a teacher last year who bought a house in Newcastle. My assistant principal lives in Newcastle. And so, you know, we have amazing schools here, but the way we support our students in this community is by having housing for our teachers, making sure that they can afford to live nearby and that they're not deciding to work in Glenwood because why am I going to drive the extra 45 minutes to get to Basalt? Our teachers are passionate about this community. They want to be here, but they deserve to be able to live near where they work.
Thank you.
I'm finishing up my 21st year in Basalt, and this was the hardest hiring year I've had. 12 years in administration. It's just getting harder and harder to bring qualified teachers to the Valley and keep them here, and housing really is the main issue. We've worked hard as a district to increase salaries. Our state is the worst funding state for education in the country. And then we live in this really unique situation right below Aspen where they can still pay more. Even though we keep raising ours, they raise their salaries too. And so we continue in Basalt, even within our district, to have the most difficult time getting and retaining qualified teachers. So I just, now's the time to, obviously we care a ton about the character of this community, but if you can't educate your children, what do you have? So it's really important that housing is prioritized for our teachers.
Just to add to that, the value of having our teachers part of our community, Basalt is a special place, and having our teachers part of that is value added. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for coming out tonight, and thanks for the good comments. We really appreciate everything you guys do for us out there. Chief Thompson, nice to see you here, sir.
Mayor.
Needing
you're
no
going to be
introduction.
missed. Thank you for all you've done as the manager and also.
Thanks, Scott.
Scott Thompson, your fire chief. I'm a little disappointed. We've cut down the number of units, and I look at that as opportunities to keep our essential workers in our community. So that being said, thank you to Michael and the Smith brothers. You've teamed up to do 50% deed restricted. I think that's unheard of in the development community right now. So thank you. I urge the council to look at this and look at this as an opportunity and the public benefit that this development team is providing. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Appreciate that. Anyone else? Come on up.
Got something. My name is Michael Davies. Bill, thank you for your service. Thank you to the
Michael.
council for all of your hard work on this project. I've been a resident in the Valley my entire life. I've moved to different communities and back again. I work for one of the larger employers in Carbondale. I'm on one of the school boards. I'm a little bit with Scott. I'm very surprised at how much this has been reduced, and I would advocate for as much as possible. And I really, really appreciate the fact that this team has looked at the development and heard the comments of the council and reduced it to a level that seems to be appropriate for what the town feels meets the needs and the character. And what a surprising project that it is creative. This is so cool to have something that is not just big boxes in a row. River cabins, access to the rivers, trail access, opportunities for our teachers to live close by, opportunities for families to live close by. It's really a cool and interesting project, and I would argue that that's what keeps Basalt special. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Anyone else? Come on up, sir. Good evening.
Good evening, Ed Williams, 529 Emma Road, Basalt. I don't know how much you could hear Mr. Fulmer, and but I've studied his response to our response to his response, and I think the applicants, there's a basic question that remains unanswered. According to their own data, Emma Road is going to be over capacity. Now, Mr. Fulmer's assertion, what he was saying is that it won't necessarily be their development that pushes Emma Road over the line, but it's going to happen. And which development will it be? Where it's very narrow there, that section. And so it seems like the strategy is to kick the can down the road until one day the road there is going to become a parking lot. And I'm not sure what you can do then. Now, this is a little bit unpleasant, but the critical problems with traffic on Emma Road were not even discussed in the body of the applicant's traffic study last fall. Didn't even come up. Data on the worst sections of the road was collected, but the applicant left their data raw in the appendices. Now, we had to hire an outside expert to uncover this. And we feel that this information is meant for the Basalt public, and the Basalt public shouldn't be expected to read through appendices to uncover and process raw engineering data to get the facts. This kind of goes to the issue of credibility and transparency. You've got to wonder what information in this project has been cherry-picked, what has been left out. These are unpleasant things. For example, I don't see how an on-site manager can stop guests and their dogs from trampling around the area there. Or how about the fact that the hotel site is directly adjacent to waterways that flow in a serpentine course to the Roaring Fork River. If you dig down 18 inches, you'll hit water all summer long. That area is positively infested with mosquitoes, so they're going to be forced to use spray pesticides from April until October. It's a radically different environment from downtown Basalt, for example. For these reasons and this lack of transparency, I have some problems with it, and I think some of these problems need to be mitigated before anything goes forward. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Anyone else? Anybody calling in? James?
Yes, if you would like to make comments on the Zoom, if you could please raise your hand. We have Randy Chase with his hand up. Randy, if you unmute yourself, you can provide comments.
I think I'm ready. You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for taking time to address this matter. Housing is important. You know, I think what we heard from was teachers and firefighters saying we need more than what you're talking about here. I think that's a great idea. Housing for workers in the neighborhood they work is important. I sent you an email with my entire message. I had a heart attack there a little over a year ago in Basalt, and my doctor's in Basalt, and you know, people like me, a community member who had been doing construction work in the neighborhood needs a place to get access to health care as I heal and get back to making income to paying rent. So you can read my email. Thanks for taking time to listen. Please do vote in favor of this and encourage the developer to add additional units. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, who do we have?
We've got Peter Grinny. Peter, if you'd like to provide comments, you can unmute.
Peter, you got the floor.
All right, thank you so much for the opportunity to make comment. Back in 2020, before COVID, I attended the Community Plan Open House, which was a great event at the high school. And I distinctly remember, in addition to all the sticky notes and the people that were there, that in reviewing that plan, the Jadwin Stott parcel was one of the key parcels for future development. And I look back at a master plan, just a draft version is all I had from March of 2020. And the Jadwin Stott parcel had the highest number of units of the 9 key and primary parcels. And in bold, it said in the comp plan, density instead of sprawl, which clearly signals it's a site appropriate for multifamily and a mix of uses. Looking at the slide tonight that the applicant presented showing the master plan compared to what's proposed, I mean, it looks so consistent. And I agree, it's a really awesome plan with so many interesting elements and a great mix. So I think, in the sketch plan process, it seems like the proposed concept should generally be acceptable and is consistent with the community plan. And then listening to the presentation tonight, just really impressive how the applicants listened to the feedback from the council and the community, and removing the glamping, reducing density, reducing units, changing the housing mix. The LOI with the school district, that's really encouraging and exciting. And then the First Tracks program, I've never heard of anything like that in a development application. So that's very creative and shows the applicant there is committed to the community, which is awesome. And then just reducing the trip generations from eliminating the daycare and glamping 50% during peak hours. That seems like it's really moving the needle. And then obviously going from 20% deed restricted as the requirement to 50% is just unheard of. And then I agree with Leroy that river cabins are really cool and would be a fun place to have anyone come visit and stay. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Next up, is it Todd? Who's up on?
Yeah, we have Todd Brewer. Todd, if you would like to unmute, you can speak to the council.
Hi, yeah, this is Todd Brewer. I am the owner of Western Refrigeration and Heating across the road in Southside. And I just wanted to speak in favor of the project. I think, especially given the recent changes, I mean, the developer seems to have accommodated all of the feedback. It really is consistent with the development plan. It's unique. It would be a great amenity. I have 10 employees, not a single one, even though they're making close to $100,000 a year, has the ability to live in Basalt. So anything we can do is going to help. So I would strongly recommend support.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience that would like, come on up, sir? Do you want to?
Lee Schwaller, 605 M Road. And as I've said before, I'm worried about the traffic. And they reduced increased the apartments for families, and eventually the kids in the families get old enough to drive, and there's going to be more and more cars, and then their boyfriends and girlfriends are going to be going over there every day after school, and it's just going to be a quagmire at that intersection at the post office. And I drive through there every single day, and I just can't imagine more people coming from my direction and having confrontations with the people coming from Basalt, thinking they don't have to stop. And that's an accident waiting to happen there, and I don't know what the solution is to it, especially with a lot more cars. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? Audience, virtual? Okay, hearing none, then I would close the public hearing and then invite comments, questions from council at this point. I've got a few myself, but I'll defer to council.
Do you have one more? Oh, no.
Sorry. I think we got Peter and we got Randy, so I think we got them all.
Cool.
So I certainly don't mind kicking it off. I think on the, first of all, once again, commend you on the work. You guys worked this thing hard, and you know, it is certainly one of the best housing formulas we've seen, I think, and I've seen in my tenure here in the town. So a lot to be said on behalf of the housing benefit that you're offering here. Just a few thoughts on transportation, and I don't believe that these have to be addressed before actions taken on sketch plan, and I may have missed, but I didn't see any assessment of service level of the two intersections. But the one I guess I'd be most concerned about is the Midland and Emma Road intersection. So, you know, it's kind of ironic. We have a new development that gets a 14-foot lane, and the entire service for all of the Frying Pan Valley, the town of Basalt, you know, Elk Run, the hill, everything else has a 12-foot lane. And so it just looks peculiar to me. It looks like that needs a little more work before you get through the preliminary phase. And I don't know if CDOT has weighed in on the turning movement, the intersection design. I mean, it's a bit hairball with a acceleration lane and a turning movement at the same time. It looks like you got to really tighten your seatbelt on that.
Talking about the right turn in Emma, or?
Yeah, just, you know, I mean, basically, you have a T intersection with people desiring to make left turns, staring down people who are flooring it to get up to, you know, ramping speed to get up on Interstate 82.
Yeah, I mean, they conceptually signed off on that design, the conceptual design. We haven't gone into detail anything.
Yeah, I think you're going to have time to work on this, but it's, you know, it'd be good to get CDOT's blessing on whatever we come up with there for a design. Yeah, I don't know. Councilors, do you want to comments? Good questions?
I'll go. I just want to say I really like the update on the unit mix. I really appreciate that. I think it's more representative of the community's needs. So thanks for doing that. And do you know, just out of curiosity, what's the unit mix on the other half, the free market units?
The unit mix on the other half, I don't think we have that data for you tonight.
I was just wondering.
The unit mix we gave is for the whole,
Okay.
for all of the units, but we can break it down separately if you'd like.
So that the unit mix is inclusive of all
Okay.
64 units, so, yeah.
And then I just wanted to point out, you know, I went and just reacquainted myself also with page 80 of the master plan, and I just think it's important to say, you know, on the record, as, you know, I think Michael did, but, you know, this is less than the minimum density, which is 80 units, and far from the maximum of 180. So I just wanted to say that because, you know, it seems like one of those situations where a lot of people aren't going to get exactly what they want, but that's not what it's about. And I think there's a good amount of compromise going on. And then I just also lastly wanted to say that I think First Track sounds, you know, interesting. It kind of reminds me of, I don't know, applying for a co-op apartment in New York or something. So maybe you could use programs like that to kind of inform, you know, our process. I don't know. I mean, it sounds interesting. So, you know, good job on that as well.
We do want to work with staff to help fine tune the details to make sure that it's transparent and completely on the up and up with how it works.
Yeah, but I mean, it sounds like a good opportunity to, you know, make sure units are going to people who are actually in the community, which I think is the most important. And, you know, obviously I would prefer that they be, you know, in Basalt, living and working in Basalt, but I know that's a pretty tight restriction. But yeah, I think it sounds like it has some promise, so.
Thanks, Angela. I would just add that we have had some people ask us that question about the First Tracks program. Would there maybe be some kind of, priority system? Like you've lived in Basalt, it could be a point system. You lived in Basalt for this long, that generates 10 points, and then it's a kind of a system to see if we can fill all the units first with Basalt proper and then work our way out. So that's one of the things we want to kind of fine tune during preliminary as well.
David?
So thanks for coming back with the updates, as always, good updates. And I appreciate all the people who come in and make comments a second time, kind of staying fresh with it and reiterating the points. I think that's important. And I have a lot of respect for all the folks who are coming out in support of this, teachers, longtime community members. I'm okay with the river cabins. I get it from the sense that, like, from a business model standpoint, that is going to be a necessary part. I'm glad you added the category 2. I think that's important. I think having the mix of the different categories. Where I'm still, though, uneasy about this project is RO versus the First Tracks. And I've been thinking a lot about this, and I'm just skeptical, honestly, of the First Tracks program, because I feel like it could be a windfall for whoever gets it first, and it's really not accomplishing all the goals that people have been saying really well in perpetuity. And I think that is, that's a big concern of mine, because First Tracks, somebody gets it, great. Well, what happens in a generation? And we have to think in those time frames with projects like this. Like, what are we going to do? So I feel like RO is the solution to that. And for all of the multifamily, just to be clear, RO being a goal for all the multifamily makes a lot more sense to me. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to sustain those benefits. And this is, like people said, it's the last chance. And conversely, if we get it right, it is close to mass transit, so I would be okay with more density if we can get this right in the sense that it's going to be a benefit. Like, a bunch of people came up and said, at least 3, I think, came up and said, hey, why don't we do more? Well, I think we could if we make sure that these are going to be preserved for locals forever, right? Otherwise, it's just now, and who knows, as things get sold off in the future, what becomes of them, right? Become more unattainable housing that we'll have to go and be having this conversation again, but we won't have another parcel of land within the urban growth boundary to address it. And so I'm really sensitive to that. And so anyway, I wanted to make those points. But like I said, Principal Waller, everybody coming up and talking about it, the fire department, I would love to see more people participate in this, because I think this is a huge, huge opportunity that's not going to come again. But we have to get it right with preserving this for resident occupied workers in the community, however you want to look at it, forever. I mean, otherwise, that's it. So the intersections, I think, are a big deal too. Not as big as the housing for me. There's something I think we need to sharpen the pencil on when we get further along, as I'm still trying to envision that left turn as well on Emma Road, the backup, even with the lane to make a right on to Midland there. Because I'm sure that'll be altered, but we really got to look at this. And I don't want to say affordable housing. I want to say community housing, because there's different parts, like I said before, different tools in the toolbox. RO is a tool that we need a lot more of that. So.
Thank you. If I could just answer 2 of those things. One on the intersection and the Emma slip lane. I mean, I was there today, Coulter and I were there today, and I agree with you that there's more work that needs to be done there. The vehicles that are kind of accelerating to get onto Highway 82. I mean, I'm not a traffic expert, but to me, maybe a stop sign there might just be a simple solution, because people have to stop. And that slip lane is extremely long on Highway 82, which provides enough ramp to get up to speed. I don't think it would be a problem. But anyway, I'm not a traffic expert. On the housing, we've thought about this, exactly what you said. We didn't detail it now because we want to still figure things out, but one of the things we've thought about is every time one of those free market units turns over, whether by sale or rent, they would have to go back into the First Tracks program and participate in that 90-day exclusivity for people that work in Basalt. So I think there is a component of longevity and protecting those units to stay in the community by so it will be sort of a modified deed restriction, if you will, where it would say somebody who wants to sell it has to go back to the town, I have intent to sell, goes back into the program, and it gets offered first for those 90 days. The challenge we have, quite frankly, council member, with RO is from a financing perspective, because 50% of the project is deed restricted. Alpine Bank is our current lender, and we've spoken to them at length about this. If the free market units have an RO deed restriction, they're not considered free market to the bank, because there is a theoretical point where demand will not meet supply because you can only sell to those resident occupied. So we are trying to really kind of, thread the needle here and deliver what the council wants, and I know the community wants, but at the same time preserving the financial viability of the project. The last thing I want to do here today is overpromise and underdeliver. I could sit up here and just say yes to you right now, but then what happens a year from now when we can't get this project out of the ground and we've all now spent a year of our time for naught? So I would, I guess, respectfully request that if you do vote tonight in favor of us going to sketch plan, I'd like to work with council and other members of the community to kind of figure out a way to accomplish that goal, but without a full-blown RO restriction, which would affect our financing.
Are you aware of, so the purchaser of the property, if they're purchasing an RO unit, are you aware, so like that would impact your financing? Do you know of how that impacts the buyer's financing? Like, is a person who's purchasing an RO unit, are they paying a higher interest rate, or, is their mortgage different than free market?
That's a good question. I think, generally speaking, the market would dictate that those units would sell for a lesser price because of that restriction, because your buyer pool is restricted. Mm-hmm. So if you qualify as RO and you buy it, 5 years later you want to go and sell it, and the market is different or whatever, you have a smaller buyer pool. So presumably, from an economic professor standpoint, those units should sell for a lesser price than a unit that doesn't have any restrictions.
And then theoretically, if it is the First Tracks program, it sort of holds at market rate, which is better for the equity of the person who's been living in it the last however many years, and their ability to trade up or trade out of that asset. In theory, one would think. But yeah, I think you make a good point about the financing mechanism, which is
difficult. I mean, that's really our driving goal here, is to deliver as much of a public benefit as we can, but still make the project feasible. One last thing I would just add there in terms of the First Tracks program is we can modify this along the way. We can create a program that accomplishes these goals without that full-blown deed restriction, in my opinion, and I guess we'll have to prove that to you, in the next round as we work out those details. It's very hard for me today to sit here and say that we could do it. And lastly, based on our conversations with these partners that we've spoken about, and given the fact that it's only 32 units, if you look at the Housing Coalition's numbers, the demand for units is in the thousands. We think that these 32 units could potentially get scooped up by our affordable housing partners. There have been conversations where partners have said to us, great, if we can get 4 units of deed restricted, great, but what about the free market? And that was really how we came up with the First Tracks program, because these affordable housing partners said, we're out there buying free market units right now. So can we get first right of refusal on these free market units? Can we buy them pre-construction? So what we're sort of hoping, because it makes our job easier too, is if we can have all these units sort of accounted for before we ever break ground, which I think is possible, we'll have a successful project, and they will be all going to a lot of these housing partners that we're already working with.
Yeah, I still think without having something recorded, it would be hard to sustain that, though, saying, well, it's going to be, there's nothing to enforce that. that's gonna go back into a program with a lottery. You know what I mean? I just don't, or not a lottery, but some kind of prioritization program. There's nothing to force that.
From an enforcement perspective, how would we enforce it?
Well, I just don't see how there is a way you could do that without having it be like a deed of trust or something recorded.
Okay.
Okay. Ryan, do you want to weigh in on this, or we would love to hear from?
You know, I don't have anything that hasn't already been said. I do want to just say I do really appreciate you guys listening and taking account for all the things we brought up in the previous meetings. That does show that you guys want to be a good partner. You know, the river cabins still are, you know, I get we changed the name, but they're still the same cabins. And the traffic is just what really gets me. We have to have a good plan. I've heard Transvernian development 1,000 times sitting on council, and I'll believe it when I see it. So, but I do appreciate it, and I think everything David said too about the resident occupied. I like that you guys are trying to work through this, but we need as much as this as we can for people in Basalt, especially the teachers, the firefighters, the police team. But thank you guys for continuing to work on this.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what's been said here tonight. I appreciate you guys coming forward, especially on the category 2. I appreciate the fact that, you know, to me, you didn't take any square footage out. You know, you subtracted some units, but you added bedrooms. That's the way I'm kind of seeing it. So it makes more sense to me if if you're just plucking off graphs here. This is the 2 bedrooms are almost quadruple what they were on the first presentation. The 1 bedrooms are double at least on what they were on the first presentation. So I really appreciate that. And I think we're just going to have to kind of work out some stuff as we go forward. I'm warming up to the thing. I understand the need for affordable housing. As the sketch plan, there's a lot of people's concern about how this looks as an entrance to our town. For me, when I read the master plan, I lump this together with the Stott property because I think that's what they're talking about is the entire piece of those parcels together, not just Jadwin when they come up with the 80 or the 180 density units that people are referring to. So I just would like, when we're going forward, that we're keeping all that in context because part of that properties, according to the master plan, is work and play as well. So that would be residential. If we scoop them all up on one, it doesn't make sense. That's why I think the master plan has sort of area that you can interpret, right? And one group's going to interpret the other way. And the way I'm seeing it is, I see the red line outlined and, in the master plan, it's both properties. So certainly warming up to it. I think I don't have a problem with the cabins. I think the units need to be affordable. They need to be for people in this valley. I appreciate the move to 90 days. I think I'm warming up to it. That's what I think.
I'll just add my 2 cents and then we'll probably see where we are. Well, to be sort of direct about this, I intend to vote in favor of our resolution. And the reasons are that we're at our wit's end in terms of housing. And this is not a perfect program. It's as good as we've seen, 50% affordable housing. And, it's in the urban growth boundary. We have spent a lot of treasury on open space in our valley as not only Basalt, but up and down the valley. Basalt alone, we've secured, as you come up the valley from Catherine's store, we've got Woods property, we've got the Rock Bottom Ranch, Salt and Stall, Glacier, Billy Grange, the Shehigh property, and Cerise property on the other side. So then you crash into Pitkin County with RS10 zoning, and then on the other side you got BLM. So we've done a whale of a good job as a community in terms of protecting our urban growth boundary. We have certain designated development sites that are surrounded by deed-restricted open space.
Right.
These are not light restrictions, these are impairments on the deed, and our future is guaranteed. So future generations are going to thank us, and Leroy and Rick and the guys that have been working on this thing for a long time, to make sure we have that perfect little town, which sits, it's a sophisticated urban setting in a context of open space, and it's a great deal. But it's now, I think, time has come for us to step up and address housing, and we can't ignore it any longer. It's just not become untenable. Every one of our public service entities, from the school district to our fire district, our own staff, I just think that I've been a strong advocate for open space and parks. I noticed in our financial review tonight, we're doing a little over $2 million a year, I think, in post income. So, I don't worry about our parks and open space budget being covered. But I do think I am now getting very worried about whether we're going to have a viable community with people that live here. So there are lots of nits and gnats. That's what preliminary plan's about. This is a sketch plan review. So this is kind of a philosophical, conceptual, sort of values-based decision here about whether this is in general the right direction. And we vote with the belief that we can resolve a lot of these detailed issues at a preliminary plan level where we can get the engineers to spend some time on it. So that's where I'm going to come out. And so I guess I'm willing to either entertain either further questions or a motion and see where we are. I honestly don't know where we are. So be really good to go around the horn, see if there's a motion.
I'll go ahead and say I thought long and hard about this one, and I'm willing to go forward to see what you guys can do. Because I know, like Bill said, you got preliminary next, and we go forward and see what you can come up with. I really think you can do more. I think this could be a great project for that. And the design is good, and we have plenty of open space, and there is open space on this design. But I think we can do more with it, and we just don't have many more chances yet. And that's part of the reason I want to give you guys the chance to show us what you can do, because if not you guys, then who, right? I want to see, but I definitely want to see RO in the prelim plan. I mean, we have to do it, all right?
That motion?
Mayor, I move that the town council adopt resolution number 38, 2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
Were you choking on that?
Huh?
Did you choke on that?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Maybe a little, honestly, Mayor.
No, that's great. So we have a motion and a second. Pam, I think you better call the roll on this one.
Thank you. Let us begin with David Knight,
Yes.
Angela Anderson,
Yes.
Ryan Slack.
Yes.
Thank you, Ryan. Bill Kane
Yes.
and Dieter Schindler.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you in, I don't know, whenever.
You'll see us. Thank you. Thank you, council members.
Okay.
Thank you. They don't want to see the rest of the meeting? They don't want to see the rest?
Yeah. I'm not going to see that for another. That's going to be yours. I really appreciate your time. I just...
Yep, take it easy.
Let's party. Yeah.
Let's see here.
Some of the language.
740. We're only 50. I don't know who came up with that time.
I really respect all of the speakers that have attended.
Yeah. That's pretty funny. Oh, is that?
This kind of stuff is sort of point. So you do have to kind of.
Were they back to us?
Yeah, they're really. This is what they're saying. What do they mean? Well, what are they not saying?
That's their public. Do you
Is that a presentation for this next item?
She was like, you could be like kind of taking maybe associated.
What's that? No, I don't think Dave is. Oh, look at.
He's there.
Oh, wow. We're moving up in the world.
Better use it.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't even see you back there, Dave.
He just snuck in.
Oh.
I'm not reporting today. I'm just here just in case.
You can come on up. So, okay, we're all back to full strength. So next item is, this is ordinance number 3, series of 2023, ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, approving easement agreement for the Midland Streetscape project. So, yeah, there are quite a few of them. That's a bit of an interesting jigsaw puzzle there, but thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's part of the reason why I had our team develop this exhibit, so you guys could see all 9 of the areas that we're bringing to you tonight. But tonight we're bringing to you 8 draft easements for the Midland Streetscape project. The properties which have been identified sit adjacent to our right-of-way, and so the project encroach on onto that private property. I will say most of the areas where we're seeking an easement from the property owners are kind of the quasi-public area anyway. They're want to be inclusive of the sidewalks and not impose that our private landowners that sit adjacent to the project are kind of are burdened by the project and the improvements. We would seek to maintain those improvements as we plan to build them as part of the project. So Jeff and I have been kind of working hand in hand on getting these 9 easements, and we continue to work, but most of them are kind of well thought through and have been reviewed by all the property owners. The affected properties, just to name them off, as you may know them, are Alpine Bank, the Basalt Center Circle HOA, the Sawtooth Building, Sotheby's, the Basalt Mountain Inn, the CCY Building, the building that houses Boone Salon, St. Vincent's Church, and then the Riverwalk HOA is the final one. So this is a first reading of Ordinance 3 of 2024 for the acquisition of these easements on the properties, and we would recommend you approving all 9 in this single ordinance. And Jeff and I are here to answer any questions you all have about the various properties and the easement language.
So is everybody on board, all the owners?
Yeah, I'd say we're either have agreements or are pretty close with most everyone. So this ordinance would give me authority to make some changes to the easement agreement to respond to some concerns of some of the individual property owners. Conceptually, I think we have agreement from everyone. It's just working out some of the changes to the easement agreement. So for example, in some cases, like the Sotheby's building, we needed to make some changes to accommodate their roof overhang into the easement area. In other cases, there's just kind of some wordsmithing that's going on, but I think
it's going to work out.
Yeah, but so we wanted to get this ordinance rolling so that we're in a position to, and have authority to execute and record these easements in a timely manner.
Yeah. Great. Okay, and I ask this question every time. I'm sure I know the answer to it, but there's no good and valuable consideration for these easements. This is all they're all going to be granted in the interest of getting the project implemented.
Right, the benefit is the public benefit of seeing the project happen and the improvements to the property that'll occur. Most of these areas are, areas that you would think are within the town's right of way.
There's no pecuniary interest in
No. Right.
Great, thank you. Okay, any questions, comments?
Yeah,
motions?
just a question on a temporary space. That's during construction. It's the expanded space.
It's the space that will be impacted for them to make the
Like
improvements.
where they're putting equipment and.
Yeah, or like some grading of a driveway or a parking area where we don't intend to maintain those improvements for the long term, but that'll allow us to make the drainage work, but then largely replace it as it exists.
Okay.
Or like the landscaping area that will be affected by creating a retaining wall, things like that. So we're only having a permanent easement largely in the areas where we intend to maintain the improvement going forward.
So cool. So when the project is considered completed, then it's only the real easement.
Right, the permanent easement, that's correct.
Okay, be happy to entertain a motion on ordinance number 3.
Mayor, I move that the town council approve ordinance number 3, series of 2024 on first reading and set the second reading and public hearing for March 12th, 2024.
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 We got it by Jeff.
Aye.
We're good.
Sorry to.
We didn't get it.
No, we got to, because Ryan's on remote, we have the remote participation
Oh,
policy,
about
which
that.
says
I'm sorry.
we got to do a roll
We're gonna
call.
do a roll
So
call.
don't be mad at me, be mad at Ryan. So.
Basalt won, just be happy.
Right, good.
I'm right on those 50% of the time.
Right.
Okay, let's begin with Dieter Schindler.
Yes.
Thank you. Bill Kane,
Yes.
David Knight,
Yes.
Angela Anderson,
Yes.
and Ryan Slack.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, then we move on to resolution number 9, series of 2024, resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, approving an intergovernmental agreement between the town and Pitkin County Board of County Commissioners to support a child care facility at, I'll just add, at Stotts Mill.
Yep. So resolution number 9 is to approve the IGA between Pitkin County and the town of Basalt related to the funds to complete the construction of the child care facility. As you know, staff submitted a grant in partnership with Pitkin County based on a conceptual floor plan to build out the interior space for $1.1 million. As you were updated at previous council meetings, the Colorado Department of Early Child Care awarded the maximum grant amount of $800,000, and Pitkin County generously committed $250,000 of matching funds, leaving the town with $50,000 in matching funds and responsibility for project management of the project. The IGA formalizes the transfer and allowed uses of the Pitkin County funds in exchange for 11 priority spots at the future daycare facility for the first 5 years of operation. And this 11 units or 11 spaces for priority of Pitkin County government employees is based on the contribution percentage for the total project cost. Just earlier this afternoon, staff presented this IGA to the Pitkin County Board of County Commissioners at their work session to answer any questions, where they were all, of course, very supportive of the IGA terms. But important to note here is that since the grant application was submitted, the conceptual floor plan, which showed 2 classrooms and 1 community space room, was changed. So if you remember, that original conceptual plan considered maybe an after-school programming area, and now we've moved to just having Blue Lake there and 4 classrooms. So 1 infant room, 2 toddler rooms, and 1 preschool room. These additional classrooms require additional restrooms and other such fittings, and so that has changed the project cost by $277,000, which includes, of that $277,000, about $100,000 is contingency. So, at the Picken County work session today, we described this increase of cost to the BOCC based on the understanding that Picken County has remaining $1.2 million of ARPA funds still to spend. Several of the BOCC members were interested in having staff return with another request to fulfill our gap. So we will be pursuing that in the future. The future is in the next couple of weeks. But that being said, we have identified that if needed, there are reserve and general funds available to help fund the rest of the project to fulfill that gap. So just being forward with that information. And so, of course, we anticipate returning to you once we learn what the Picken County BOCC is willing to further allow. Understanding the high priority of this community benefiting project, we are still seeking approval of resolution number 9 of this IG to move forward.
Very good. So I just kind of scanned the agreement. So based on some kind of pro rata population, the county will have first dibs on like 11 seats in the facility, or 11 spaces?
On 11 spaces, based on the percentage of their funding of the 1.1 million was about 20%, so 20% of the spaces. And the grant that we were awarded was based on it being an employer-based childcare. So
is it pretty soft? Do they just defer to us to administer it, or do they have like dominion over these?
No, it's pretty soft, and they agreed to the first 5 years. That's the initial lease term of our operator, and that way we don't, if for whatever reason, we don't anticipate this, but if the operator were to change, that doesn't roll over to the next operator or the next term.
Well, it's a great deal, isn't it? I mean,
For sure. I'm really appreciative for their partnership with us. 'Cause, I mean, like, this is a great example of how we can work together. They got a lot of employees who need childcare. We have a lot of people here that need childcare. Let's put our money together and figure something out, and they're going to continue to work with us, it sounds like, so to make this happen. So I'm really appreciative. I'll make a motion unless anybody has questions. Mayor, I move the town council adopt resolution number 10, series of 2024.
I think it's 9.
It should be 9.
Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah.
I move that the town council adopt resolution number 9, series of 2024.
Go backwards.
Second?
Okay, moved and seconded. Here we go. Bam.
Okay. We got a couple of seconds going on in there. Okay. Let's begin with Bill Kane.
Here, yes. Aye.
Dieter Schindler,
Yes.
David Knight,
Yes.
Angela Anderson.
Yes.
Elise Hoddle,
Yes.
and Ryan Slack.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, David, now we're up to resolution 10.
Go ahead and fire that one, or do we have any more?
I can give you, the quick spiel is that we did go through a bidding process, and we received 4 bids to build out the daycare center. The selection committee unanimously voted for R.A. Nelson based on qualifications and price. And since being awarded the intent to award notice at the last meeting, they have been actively working with us to VE the construction documents to get down to this 1.33, this 1.377 number. Very proactive, so we appreciate their help. And to meet the project delivery goal and to continue to move forward, we recommend adoption of resolution number 10. And those flip-flops are my fault because I switched the order at the last minute, so.
No worries.
Wait, I did have one question about the funding, so it's like between with the Delta there. No, we got it. What's the game plan for that?
So, as Michelle talked about with the last reso, there was an additional ask today
Oh, so it's all
to
it's all out
Pitkin
of
County.
that. Okay.
And so they will consider that at a future date, but, I think we're going
Okay.
hopefully here pretty soon. And so the idea would be to bring back to this council just sort of that, the the funding plan, should there be, an update if they cover all of it, but should they not cover all of that delta, then, we will need to pay for some of that. So we'd come back with a funding plan, and the idea would be, perhaps some of our reserve funds that we have set aside for daycare or others, and general fund monies.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay. Okay, we need a motion.
Want to rip it off, redeem yourself here?
Yeah. We heard for the town council adopt resolution number 10, series of 2024. I wrote it down, so.
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded. Pam?
Absolutely. Let's begin with Angela Anderson,
Yes.
Elise Hoddle,
Yes.
Ryan Slack,
Yes, sorry.
that's okay, thank you, Ryan, Bill Kane,
Yes.
Peter Schindler.
Yes.
And David Knight.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously, thank
All
you.
right, thank you. So next is resolution number 11, resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, repealing and replacing the town's personnel code and employee handbook. So Ryan and Doug.
Yeah, I'll jump on this one. Doug can fill in the gaps if need be. This is largely a housekeeping item, so the majority of what you see here in the cover letter is already enacted, which we had discussed with council during the budget process. So some of those changes included the addition of the Juneteenth holiday. We did some clarification on language for annual increases where employees are at the annual max. So essentially they are eligible for a bonus to the amount, the same amount, up to the same amount that the other employees would be getting. But it's not permanent salary, it's in the form of a bonus. So we've had that on the books here. Prior language essentially said the same thing, but it just capped it at 4%. So if we were only able to do 2% in a given year, just based on the economy, that person was still eligible for 4%. Or in the event that we've seen in the last few years with inflation doing what it was doing, they were not eligible for the full amount. So we just think from an equity standpoint, it's good for that employee, and to continue to reward our long-term employees, who typically are the ones that are going to be sitting at that high end of the range. And then let's see, we added some language. We had opted out of the family and medical leave insurance, but this just clarifies that employees are still eligible to participate in it. And then updated the federal per diem, or the per diem rates to the 2024 federal per diem, and made some formatting changes, made it effective February 27th of 2024. And then I guess I skipped the first one, which was prorated benefits for employees working 32 hours or more. So that's it.
Very good.
How often do we adjust market ranges?
For per diem?
salary?
We, every few years, we're going through that right now for the general employees. If you remember, we did it last year for the PD when we went to that step plan. So, on a cadence usually of every 3 years, I would say on average.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would say we're following what most other towns are seeming to do. I think over the last few years, there may have been some exception to that, with just, large jumps in inflation and such like that.
Does anybody ever end up back in the range? Like, the range moves and somebody ends up back?
You can get that. We try to not have that happen, but it can happen under certain circumstances. I can't think of an example of where it has in recent history, but I think people do place value on where they are in the range, even if they're getting paid more than they were yesterday. There's that value proposition to that. But, you know, the folks we're working with are, you know, I think they acknowledge that. And I think one of the strategies we have is to work through some of that is, you know, kind of every year doing a slight adjustment to the range, but typically less than inflation, so somewhere in the 2% range, and then it kind of keeps people, it helps those people at the top end, but it also allows people to move through the range.
Yeah, it kind of brings everybody up, yeah. I could geek out about comp.
We're geeking out about it right now.
Yeah, you are definitely. So, oh, hey, Mayor, I move that the town council adopt resolution number 11, series of 2024.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded.
Because we're remote, we have to do it.
Remote, of course.
Sorry.
Forgot that, and it was only 2 items ago. Okay, Pam?
All right, let's begin with Elise Hoddle,
Yes.
Ryan Slack,
Yes.
Bill Kane,
Yes.
Dieter Schindler,
Yes.
David Knight,
Yes.
Angela Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
I guess we can change that.
Okay, last but not least is resolution number 12, series of 2024. Resolution Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, approving an extension of the lease agreement with Loose Cannon LLC. So I think that's Umbrella Roofing.
This is Umbrella Roofing, so as you know, we own that property, and Trevor Cannon, who is the owner of the company, they are currently underway building their new building. They're asking for an extension on this, which staff is completely okay with. In here we have a 2-month extension. I did speak with him on the phone today, so I let him know that I would ask for this if it could go to the end of May. So that would be 75 days approximately versus 60 days. And part of his issue is his building is chugging along well, but he has 2 units. We've asked him to clear the property, so he has 20 plus years of stuff on there, 2 of which are portable buildings, but getting rid of those buildings, you know, he's got to sell them and then make arrangements for people to get there, or to come and get them. So we're okay with it. I did check with, you know, Public Works. Obviously, we're not building the new buildings on there, you know, in the next couple months, and for him to occupy that, I mean, he's been a good occupant and neighbor, and I think he'll do well by us to clear everything out by the end of May, if you choose to, I guess, go with his request from earlier today till the end of May.
Well, I mean, what happens mid-May on that space?
Nothing.
So then,
Yeah.
yeah.
It seems like an okay thing for us to do.
Mayor, I move that the town council adopt resolution number 12, series of 2024.
And is that
With the adjustment to
With
the
the
end of May?
adjustment to
May 31st?
end of May, or 1st of May, or whatever it was.
May 31st.
May 31st.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Dun, 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 dun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's begin with Ryan Slack,
Yes.
Bill Kane,
Yes.
Dieter Schindler,
Yes.
David Knight,
Yes.
Angela Anderson,
Yes.
Elise Hoddle.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Before
It was a
everybody
full and robust
runs
meeting,
away.
and appreciate everyone's attention.
Before you guys run away, would you guys pay attention to the lights
Yes.
outside?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So if you'd walk out there now, is probably a perfect time to see what the effect of the changes are. So those shields were added on the town hall side now. So there's been further mitigation.
Has the mugging rate increased since we've decreased
Seriously,
the lights?
yes.
Yeah. Let's go outside.
I run to my car.
Did you?
That's unfortunate. Sure.
Return. All right.